Thank you for joining us for this masterclass, the longevity of legacy brands. If you're not familiar with Chairish, we are one of the largest home decor marketplaces in the world with 1 million pieces listed for sale. We just hit 1 million in inventory. Our platform offers the most exciting inventory from vintage and antique dealers, as well as newly made material, making great designs available to designers, collectors, and enthusiasts. I'm Caroline Cole. I work with the trade team at Chairish, working with East Coast designers, assisting with sourcing projects on the site. And today I'm chatting with the longstanding Chairish vendor, Liberty and 33rd from South Bend, Indiana. Before we start, I want to offer a welcome to our trade members. The Chairish Trade Program offers access to net pricing, dedicated support, and sourcing services. And if you're not already a member, we welcome you to join at chairish.com/trade or leave us a comment and we'll get back to you. And if you have questions during this presentation, please use the Q&A. We're recording the session and we will email that recording later this week. Our guests today are from Liberty and 33rd Furniture Company, a vendor that has sold on Chairish since 2016. They have an inventory of over 1,400 items on Chairish, and they've earned super seller status in the last 3 years running. I can attest that their inventory is consistently sourced by Chairish trade members for their projects. Welcome to Adam Cramer, the founding owner. Adam has built the team at Liberty and 33rd that stands out amongst the industry's best in refinishing and restoring vintage designer furniture. And Adam Skipper, who is the design director. Adam works with interior design clients from the initial consultation to the delivery to source and place prime pieces. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline. It's really nice to be here. Just a real brief history of Liberty and 33rd. My wife and I started this company a little over 10 years ago. We started in local retail here in South Bend, really quickly moved into the Chicagoland market, both for sourcing furniture as well as dealing with clients in that market. And then, as you mentioned, in 2016, we discovered this thing called the internet, which really helps us move product. And so our partnership with Chairish over the last 6 years has really moved our business forward. As you mentioned, allowed us to work with a lot of great interior designers across the country. We've also been able to expand our reach where we source pieces all around the country as well. So that's who we are.
That's great. We love the internet too here at Chairish. So let's getting right into the topic at hand. What differentiates branded furniture from other furniture?
So the furniture industry is not that different from other industries like fashion or automotive. When you think about top brands in the fashion industry, you think like Gucci, Prada, Louis Vuitton. For automotive, you're thinking Bentley, Aston Martin, Mercedes-Benz. And these are all brands that come top of mind because they've been around for a long time. They have a certain quality of craftsmanship and a certain breadth of styles, and the consumer can expect high quality from these brands. Well, furniture is the same. We have several brands that have stood the test of time. They have a breadth of styles, and they continue to stand out in the furniture industry today.
And we've pulled together a set of the top brands selling through Liberty and 33rd, starting with Baker Furniture and their line of English reproduction antiques. This, we are lucky to have an installation shot from a recently sold table from a Chairish designer, Lily Durea from Connecticut, sourced this beautiful mahogany Georgian Revival dining room extension table and shared her installation with us. I love the way she's used this antique style for a lively, livable family dining room.
Yeah, so Baker is far and away our best-selling brand. We pride ourselves in having one of the largest collections of Baker in the country. What makes Baker stand out, both is their longevity, so they've been around since the late 19th century, but also the quality of craftsmanship. the attention to detail, their partnership with specific designers as well. It just stands out. If there was a Mount Rushmore of vintage designer furniture, they're definitely up on that mountain.
And we wish that there was. Another piece by Baker Furniture is this beautiful Georgian secretary, and I've paired it with one of my favorite shots from a recent Chairish photo shoot, the home of Alison Spear, with a similar open armoire in this colorful chinoiserie interior.
Yeah, what I love about this, Caroline, is this is a very traditional English reproduction piece, and yet it's right at home in this, you know, contemporary design space with a mix of styles. So this period looking piece really can be in a room that is a mix of chinoiserie. You've got, you know, the tiger print. I just think it's wonderful.
Chairish recently published a 2022 home furnishings resale report. This is the second year we have made this publication, and shared a bit of insider info. Baker Furniture is the best-selling brand at Chairish this year with two specific lines. One is the Baker Historic Charleston collection, featuring pieces like the ones we've been looking at, and Michael Taylor for Baker with this ottoman that is for sale at Liberty 33rd. Moving on to Kindle Furniture with another beautiful Chairish photo shoot with similar federal style furniture from the home of Patricia Altschul in Charleston, South Carolina, famously designed by Mario Boada.
I love this room. You know, this is a room filled with period antiques, but Kindle is another brand that, just like Baker, they have these great reproduction pieces that would be at home in a historic home like Patricia Altschul's. You know, it's that same quality and same style that has just been reproduced for today.
Next is Kittinger Furniture with this very special piece with a very special backstory.
Yeah, so Kittinger is one of the highest end American manufacturers, so much so that they caught the attention of the White House. And beginning in the 1970s, during Richard Nixon's presidency, he commissioned some pieces for the White House, for the Oval Office, and some of the surrounding offices and rooms in the White House. Every successive president since then, for their inauguration days, and also for use in the White House, they've commissioned several other pieces into the White House collection. This is like a unicorn piece because they go in, but when do they ever come back out? Well, this piece was decommissioned recently from the White House, and when I saw it, I just knew we had to have it. The provenance is impeccable. It has the distinguished label where it came from. Now, we believe this piece most likely was commissioned there in the 1970s during Nixon's time. So if it could talk, I'm sure it would have some stories to tell.
But did it have any classified files inside those drawers?
That's classified information. I can't share that.
Moving from reproduction antiques into the arts and crafts style with Gustav Stickley and Limbert Furniture. Yeah,
so most interior designers today know the name Stickley. It's still really high-end furniture that's being produced in America to this day. This dates back to the late 19th century, to the Stickley family. So Gustav Stickley is widely considered kind of the father of the craftsman movement in America. And he was a part of 5 brothers who all worked in the industry. So his brother Leopold and John George, they started a company, L&J.G. Stickley. And then 2 other brothers were a part of Stickley Brothers Furniture. These 3 different companies competed against each other for decades in producing high-end craftsman furniture that's really well known for its quality. When we get into these pieces, back to refinishing them, we see the craftsmanship and the pride that was taken into the building of these and manufacturing of these fine pieces.
And this style, arts and crafts, is also referred to as the mission style in reference to the Spanish colonial districts on the West Coast.
correct.
Yeah, and I'd like to point something out while we're still on this slide. There's a picture of the label at the top, and when you're sourcing high-end designer and branded furniture, you always want to look for the label. And Adam, can you tell us about this?
Yeah, this is a unique label for Gustav Stickley's Craftsman Shops. It's a joiner's compass with the Dutch phrase "als ik kan," which means "to the best of my ability." The Stickley name they really prided themselves on doing the best work, the best craftsmanship that they could, and it really shows.
Moving on to the mid-century modern style with Dunbar furniture.
Yeah, so Dunbar is a really interesting story. They come from a very small town in Indiana, Bern, Indiana. I don't even know if they have a single stoplight there, but they had this furniture manufacturing there. And what they did was they hired a superstar designer in Edward Wormley, who came in from the 1930s through to the 1960s as their design director, and really moved them into this mid-century modern style, really sleek lines, gorgeous furniture with really high quality woods, mahogany, walnut, rosewood. And then he kind of passed the baton in the 60s and 70s to Roger Sprunger, who also created some iconic designs for Dunbar.
And Herman Miller, who is maybe one of the best known furniture manufacturers of the 20th century, and recently merged with Knoll, news that broke a couple of years ago and really shook the furniture industry. They're now referred to as Miller Knoll.
Yeah, so there's a unique history here with Herman Miller as well. Occasionally we come across these early Herman Miller pieces, and we have an example here that's currently available in our shop. Herman Miller started out making really high-end bedroom furniture, like this beautiful vanity here, French styles, English reproduction styles. And then in the 1930s, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but they transitioned into more sleek modern furniture, which is what we know of them today. It's what they're most known for. So you see here a piece by George Nelson, who was one of their more iconic designers in the 40s, 50s, and 60s for Herman Miller.
I love the comparison of these two labels. Even the fonts have changed over the course of several decades. And that's another great thing to look for when looking at Herman Miller pieces. This is a great visual from that same furnishings resale report recently published by Chairish, showing the top searched brands by region on the site. And true to what you might expect, going from East to West Coast, clients have been shopping for brands that feature traditional styles like Baker, Henredon, Ethan Allen out of Boston. In Florida, it's a bit of a mix with Ralph Lauren, Baker, and some glam with Baccarat. And on the West Coast, you see that modern influence with Roche-Beaubois, Herman Miller, and Knoll. And this furnishings resale report is on the website. It has some other really fascinating tidbits. I encourage you all to check it out. Liberty and 33rd has its own restoration studio, and one of your specialties is restoring pieces. What can you tell us about that process and what you look for?
Well, we get pieces that come to us in a variety of conditions. Our team assesses each piece when it comes in to determine, whether it just needs a light touch and a polish, or if it needs a full restoration. And we do refinish in-house, and that involves stripping pieces down, sanding them, doing any fills, and repairing any holes or cracks that may have come about with time and use. And we also remove all the hardware and polish that if it's needed. And then we restain these pieces. We spray them with a coat of lacquer so that they're ready for everyday use in the modern home. And it's when we're getting into the restoration process that we really can see the quality of branded and designer high-end pieces. It's almost like looking at a dresser and saying it's beautiful on the outside, but when you open that drawer, is it dovetailed? What is the interior made from? we get the question of, is this piece solid wood or is it veneer all the time? And that's really not the right question to be asking when you're purchasing furniture. You should be asking, is this piece solid wood construction? Because most high-end furniture is solid wood construction with a mahogany veneer, for instance. You rarely would find a solid mahogany dresser. So these high-end designer branded furnishings, they are solid wood construction. They do glide easily. The tables, come apart easily. So that's something that we look for when we're restoring pieces.
And a recently restored piece you shared with us is this exceptional planner group 20 drawer credenza.
Yeah, so part of our refinishing is having the vision, right? So I knew exactly what I was looking at when I saw this piece. I actually went and picked this out of a home in Chicago a while back. And as you can see, they took some liberties with the original design and kind of shabby chic'd it for their daughter's room. And we were able to take it back, as Andrew just shared, strip it all the way back down to the original wood. We were able to source original Paul McCobb hardware and bring it back as though it had just come off the factory line in the 1950s. This is one of McCobb's most coveted designs from his planner group collection, and I think the finished product speaks for itself.
Your client's daughter might have been ahead of the game, though, because Barbiecore pink is trending right now. But here we have a shot of a restoration in action. This is a beautiful image.
Yeah, so again, you're looking at a planner group dresser that we've stripped all the way down, and we're in the process of lacquering, and again, bringing it back to that luster, that pop with the black lacquered finish. Paul McCobb designs are one of our most sought after pieces by designers to this day, and for good reason. It's just really quality furniture with a beautiful, sleek mid-century look.
So we talked a little bit about the top selling brands, but what can you tell us about furniture designers partnering with brands, and who has had successful partnerships?
So sure, think about the brands as like the manufacturer. They understand volume, they understand quality of materials, and they have the clientele. The furniture designers are individuals who have the creativity and the style and can bring their interpretations of different past styles to the modern customer throughout the decades. And so a lot of furniture brands have tapped designers in the past and continue to do so to design different lines of furniture for them.
Yeah, so the first name that comes to my mind when I think of a collaboration with a brand and a designer is Milo Boffman's 50-year collaboration with Thayer Coggan. In the early 1950s, when Thayer Coggan was getting ready to launch his company, he brought on Boffman, and the rest is really history. I mean, Boffman brought this pizzazz, this chic look with polished chrome, as you can see in these chairs, with brass and glass, and a lot of burl woods, and just a beautiful modern look. He also worked a lot with upholstered pieces, one of the most iconic pieces being like a rosewood case sofa. All of those are still really highly sought after to this day. Thayer Coggan is still in production, and they still produce some of these pieces, but again, we found that the vintage pieces that were, period from the 1950s and 60s are the ones that are mostly sought after by collectors and designers.
And a little louder for those of us who've been confused. How do you pronounce that designer's name?
Milo Boffman.
Turns out I've been saying it wrong for 10 years.
That's okay.
And
yeah, so another collaboration here, and we touched on this earlier, is Gilbert Rohde for Herman Miller. And so, as we saw, Herman Miller was producing these really ornate pieces. Gilbert Rohde came in 1932 as their design director till 1944 when he passed away. And he really brought this sleek modernist design to their manufacturing. He also used some really incredible exotic woods. So this vanity pictured here, when we found this piece, it was actually spray painted white. And as our team got into it, stripping layer after layer, we uncovered this beautiful East Indian laurel wood matched with that blonde bird's eye maple, and the piece really pops. So we take great pride in bringing pieces back as close as we can to the original of what these great designers like Gilbert Rohde envisioned in the first place.
Edward Wormley for Dunbar.
Yeah, so we've touched on this a little bit already. He had this prolific career over 30 plus years with Dunbar. This is a really unique story. This sideboard here is a walnut case with a beautiful book matched rosewood front. We pulled this out of a collection close to Bern, close to the town where they originally manufactured these. There was a worker who worked for Dunbar for about 50 years, and his entire home was full of these wonderful pieces by Edward Wormley. His family, after he passed away, his family called us because we have a reputation for selling a lot of high-end Dunbar pieces and restoring them and finding the right collectors and buyers through our partnership with Chairish. They contacted us and said, "Hey, we'd love for you to deal, with these pieces." And so we were able to pull a household full of these really high-end Edward Wormley pieces in one location, which was a great find.
Ray and Charles Eames for Herman Miller, maybe the most well-known designers for the most well-known manufacturer of the 20th century, and a poster advertising Charles Eames for Herman Miller. Wouldn't you know it, on the wall behind you guys, almost like we planned it, this poster is for sale on Chairish.
Yeah, so everybody knows the Eames name. Ray and Charles Eames were a husband-wife duo. They started out in the 1930s, actually in the war effort. They were working with bent plywoods and moldings and things like that. After the war ended, they turned their attention to furniture and created some of these iconic designs. So you have the DCM chairs here in a bent walnut plywood. Later, they would go on to design the iconic Eames lounge chair, which again was a bentwood shell with an upholstered, usually a leather upholstered seat. So definitely an iconic duo, if there ever was one in mid-century design.
And this chair, which has been replicated many times over, one of the many ways you know that you're getting an authentic Eames chair are those black rubber shock mounts at the back. And of course, the Eames label. And I want to call attention to the fact that that label says Herman Miller designed by Charles Eames. It was not until the late 80s, early 90s that Ray Eames, his wife and partner, was written back into the story of designing for Herman Miller. She was an equal part of the team and was not mentioned on things like this fabulous poster featuring Charles as the designer genius.
Mm-hmm.
Shows how much things have changed.
In a good way.
Finn Ewell for Baker Furniture, not Finn Jewell.
Right. So Finn Ewell was this iconic Danish designer who built what I would say designed pieces of art. So shown here, this table, which we currently have available, it's kind of the current gem of our entire collection. It's known as the Judas table. He designed this in collaboration with cabinet maker Niels Vader in Denmark. And it's got incredible book matched rosewood veneers, and then these silver medallions adorning the entire top. It's really, like I said, it's like a piece of art that doubles as a functional piece of furniture. So Baker,
what book matched is for our listeners.
Yeah, so book matched, if you think of a book and then you open it up, it's like the veneer is splayed like this throughout the entire piece. It's just a beautiful kind of symmetric design on the top. And so Baker Furniture, being the really high-end American manufacturer, they wanted to bring some of that Danish style and design to the American consumer. So in the 1950s, they entered into a short-lived partnership with Finn Ewell, designing chairs like these beautiful teak and cane dining chairs. Again, it was a very short collection that produced really high-end pieces, and they're very highly sought after today. And we always try to keep some Finuel pieces in stock if we can at all times.
Michael Taylor for Baker Furniture.
Yeah, again, a really iconic partnership with Baker. Michael Taylor designed for them roughly from the 1950s to the late 1970s. And his most well-known collection was called the Far East Collection, where he was really bringing that Oriental and chinoiserie design, bringing that mix in with Baker's traditional Georgian and English reproduction styles. This campaign chest is from the Far East collection, and it came to us in a nice brown toned walnut. We decided to give it a little pop, and we went with a blue lacquer on this piece, and I think the piece speaks for itself. It's got a beautiful look for a modern home.
And it is shown with a detail from an interior from a home in Raleigh, North Carolina, designed by M.A. Allen. Barbara Berry.
Yeah, so this is an example of Baker being this iconic legacy brand still moving forward in the future. And this partnership started in the 1990s and continues today between Barbara Berry and Baker. And a lot of the iconic pieces from the line are discontinued. So if you want them, you have to buy vintage. But Barbara sort of brings this new perspective to their company with this interpretation of like a neoclassical or even Art Deco sometimes, but streamlined look. So if you're looking at the chair on the left, it's got these beautiful classical lines, but it's contemporary in feel, and the proportions are modern. It's more for comfortable living rather than a petite antique chair that nobody wants to sit on. So yeah, this is just another example of Baker looking toward the future, and every decade or every era having these great designer partnerships.
We're lucky to have some installation photography from other projects by Chairish trade members, including some works in progress, like this pair of Danish modern teak sculpted lounge chairs in an interior also by Lili Duria in Connecticut.
I love this because it shows the brilliance of the interior designers. She wanted these chairs for the project. They were wonderful chairs, great style, great condition, but the upholstery was a little tired. You can see some stains in the photo on the right. And this is something we do with a lot of designers. We can either have pieces reupholstered and then shipped out, or we are happy to ship pieces to the workrooms, or in this situation, ship the pieces to the client's house, where the designer can then present different upholstery options in situ and choose the perfect new upholstery that's going to be on these chairs for a long time to come.
And they're using that yellow pattern shown above.
Love it.
A Jacques Garcia for Baker Furniture table. This is in an interior by Savage Interior Design in Nashville. And the client in this case lacquered the table after purchasing it from Liberty and 33rd.
This is another great example of the designer, using their talents. I don't know about you, Caroline, but I love this image.
I love the silhouette of this piece. Yeah.
Yes, it's so yeah, this is an example of the designer having a vision. I remember this piece being in our showroom, and when it came in, it was in really great condition, maybe some light surface wear on the top just from use, but the designer purchased it. They knew they were getting a good piece because of the brand, and look at the great style. And then they had it, white lacquered for their project, and I think it just turned out stunningly.
This is a fabulous interior from a boutique hotel in Key West, Florida, designed by Ozzie Shellhorse, using a pair of 1980s upholstered chairs that the designer placed as is from after sourcing from Liberty and 33rd. And it is the teal and purple chair in the background.
That's right. Yeah, these chairs were in the original upholstery, and they're so fun, but it just goes to show that high end doesn't mean it can't be fun and eclectic. I think these are perfect for a boutique hotel.
And another extraordinary project that you worked on was this exceptional Frank Lloyd Wright house called the DeRhodes House in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah, so this was a really fun project for us. A client of ours, local to the area, purchased the DeRhodes house. He's kind of a historian, historic buff, and he brought us in for two reasons. The house was built in 1906 and was filled with a lot of the craftsman furniture, like we discussed earlier, stickly pieces, things like that. And he wanted to go with a little bit of a mix of that and also throw in some mid-century modern. And so what you see here is the original Frank Lloyd Wright designed arts and crafts sofa, paired with a pair of newly reupholstered Paul McCobb planter group chairs that he purchased from Liberty and 33rd. It's fun, and it feels like it works really well together. The clean lines of mid-century modern work really, really well with the arts and crafts style. So that was a really fun collaboration, working on a project from a historic home here locally.
And we also got a lot of the pieces from that home. We were able to take them, and now they're offered for sale in our shop. So it's a win-win.
Yep.
Another high-end Frank Lloyd Wright piece that is for sale on your shop is this exceptional extension table.
Yeah, so most people, when we think of Frank Lloyd Wright, we think, okay, the architect, the designer. What a lot of people don't know is he designed a lot of furniture, especially for the homes that he designed and built. Oftentimes he would design the furniture specifically for that home to fit the specific needs of the home. But later on in his career in the 1950s, he entered into a partnership with Henredin Furniture with this Taliesin collection, which again was a short-lived collection, really high-end pieces. You can see a unique blend of mid-century modern in that arts and crafts style, mixed with a really high-end mahogany wood. Fantastic pieces from a fantastic collection that are highly sought after today.
And you can really see the architectural influence in his pieces of furniture too.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a lot about brands that have been longstanding, many of which are still producing furniture. So what would you say to clients who are considering going to these same companies to buy newly made versus buying vintage designer furniture?
I think there are three things that make vintage, especially restored vintage, stand out. Number one being price point. You're going to save a ton of money going with vintage or restored vintage versus ordering new or custom. And number two, and maybe most topical at the moment, is these pieces are all in stock and ready to ship. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure everybody here has experienced supply chain issues and delays, and nobody likes to wait. So, with vintage and restored vintage, they're in stock, ready to ship. And once they're refinished, most of these pieces are like new, and everything that leaves our warehouse is ready to place. So that's a huge plus. And then the third thing I would say would be that vintage is green. And I know we all can agree that that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Antiques are green.
Yes.
And one last visual from the Furnishings Resale Report is demonstrating the traditional distribution chain versus the resale marketplace distribution chain, with the efficiency that is available with ready-made things. In 2022, Chairish expects to offset 100% of the estimated carbon emissions from our product shipping worldwide. So if that's not reason enough to shop vintage, I don't know what is. And with that, we will take some questions from attendees. One question that has come in is, does refinishing these pieces diminish the value, or is it okay if they are reproduction anyway?
Yeah, so I think most of us have seen an episode or two of Antiques Roadshow, right? And, if a piece has been touched by a refinisher, they'll say, well, boy, if this was original, it'd be worth $100,000 more or whatever. We found that unless the piece has this incredible provenance, like, this was John F. Kennedy's, desk that he used in his home, it actually it only increases the value to make it beautiful and more functional again. So, you know, our process of bringing pieces almost like they're coming off the factory line again really increases the value and the functionality of the pieces for many years to come.
Another question is, do you see a difference between brands made in the US versus brands made overseas?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked a lot today about American-made furniture, and some of the brands that used to be American-made have moved their factories overseas. And yeah, we definitely see that. You know, when we talk about what was the heyday of American furniture, I really think it's the first half of the 20th century, that arts and crafts movement into the mid-century modern movement, and mixed in with all the English reproduction by Baker and Kindle, as we've already spoken about. That's when craftsmanship was at its highest. And so we do see a little bit of a drop off from pieces that have been shipped to factories overseas. The quality isn't quite the same as what some of these vintage pieces have.
When you do decide to refinish a designer piece, how do you decide how to refinish it if it's different from its original finish?
With many pieces, we try to get as close to the original factory finish as possible, if it's appropriate to the piece and still desirable to consumers. But some pieces, like the Paul McCobb pieces, for instance, we have found they do really great in black, and McCobb did do some pieces originally in black.
Yeah.
So that's not, you know, a far leap. But I would say, as long as the finish works with the piece, that's what we're going to do. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd agree. We're looking for, we're bringing, you know, vintage design into the 21st century home. So like the example of the Michael Taylor chest, that wasn't originally offered in blue, but it looks beautiful in blue. And guess what? If somebody wants it brown again, it could be stripped and refinished in brown again. You know, it's not an irreversible process in refinishing. So we like to have a little bit of fun with it, but we also, we want to respect, you know, the original design as often as we can.
And one last question for new or interested vintage sellers. What course of study do you recommend? Can you share any tips about learning these brands or makers and learning how to attribute pieces?
You're probably the one to talk about this most, but I would say the internet is your friend. There's so much information that's available out there right now. You don't even have to go to a library anymore. You know, start looking up high-end brands and then reading about their histories and dive deeper from there.
Yeah,
So we support libraries.
Yes, I love the
we
library.
love libraries. That being said, the internet can also be your enemy, because anything with chrome or brass can sometimes be attributed to Milo Boffman, and it's often not the case. So for us as seasoned, you know, professionals in this industry, we actually have a large collection of old catalogs and, you know, materials that help us identify, but the labels are your best friend. So if you go into a store or an antique mall or wherever you're trying to source something, if I'm there with you, I'm on the ground looking for a label. Is it underneath the piece? Is it in a drawer? That's going to be your best chance of making sure that it's an authentic vintage piece if it has the original label.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Adam and Andrew. And for anyone listening who's interested in the pieces we looked at today, all of them are listed in the Liberty and 33rd shop at Chairish. And you're welcome to send us questions. We can always get back to you after the program. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline.